Okay, so hi everybody and welcome to another ProcessMaker webinar. Today we're going to talk about synchronizing a strategy with active workflows using the Business Rules plugin. So if you're looking for a tool that allows you to define business logic with a clear and easy to use user interface, well, this is the perfect webinar for you. I think we're ready to get started. Let me welcome Edwin Paredes here, Technical Product Owner at ProcessMaker. Hi, Edwin. Good morning. And how are you today?
Good morning, Giovanni. I'm fine, thank you.
Perfect. So you probably remember me from past webinars. Anyway, in case you don't, I'm Giovanni Lopez, Training Manager at ProcessMaker. And well, today is all about this amazing plugin called Business Rules. So without further ado, let's kick off this webinar with the little introduction to our flagship product, ProcessMaker, just in case this is the first time you heard about it. Then I'll brief you on the general characteristics of the Business Rules plugin, right before Edwin amazes us with a live demonstration. And finally, we'll give you a couple of minutes to submit all of the questions and comments you may have after the presentation. So let's go back to the presentation here. So ProcessMaker, how does it work? Well, this is pretty much the standard for all BPM solutions. We have designed ProcessMaker around this methodology. The first step is to build or automate your processes. Business analysts and subject matter experts can build a process model using our BPMN to all compliant process modeler by simply dragging and dropping process elements onto the process map. Remember, as you easily draw your process, ProcessMaker is doing all of the heavy lifting behind the scenes to create a software model that will entirely run online. Once your process is built and activated, users can begin immediately running cases. Then, once your process has been running for a while, your managers will insist on having access to reports and dashboards, which show them how the process is performing against key performance indicators and service level agreements. ProcessMaker includes a suite of business intelligence tools which make this type of analysis easy and extremely valuable. And finally, once your reports have identified the issues and ways to improve your processes, you can go ahead and do that. Optimize your processes. Okay, so that's about ProcessMaker. Business rule. So what's a business rule? For example, you can see in the image below that we're setting up a set of rules in order to calculate an amount, applying a specific tax rate in accordance to each country, right? This kind of dynamic rules will usually be defined in a group of conditional gateways, or maybe using a trigger that works with a PHP function to perform the calculus. But that will mean that your business analysts will be forced to go into your gateways properties or even into your trigger source code. You can see that sounds like you're making their work unnecessarily harder, right? Well, that's exactly where the Business Rules plugin shines as a savior to help your company. This plugin's main function is to keep a strategy separate from process design. As my friend Edwin here will show you in a moment, you'll be able to define this kind of rule set for your entire process using a really friendly user interface. So you can imagine that your analyst will take sole charge of maintaining business logic for multiple use cases in a centralized location, while leaving process design and configuration to your IT experts and developers. Well, you can notice that I really like this plugin, but I think that's enough talk for now. Let me pass controls to Edwin, who's going to present a live demonstration of this outstanding tool, part of ProcessMaker Enterprise. Okay, so let me just make Edwin the presenter.
So my name is Edwin Paredes. I've been working in ProcessMaker for around 3 years. and I've been working in product management for a couple of years now. And I'm here to give a quick demo about business rules. So let's start with saying that business rules can change the data of a case. Therefore, they can impact any functionality that's based on variables, from the flow information displayed in the to the information displayed in the forms. In this demo, we'll make use of business rules to generate new data based on existing data. The results of the rules will be used to generate the content of a PDF document. So let's have a quick overview of the process. The first name is stock VAT deduction. The purpose of it is to know what is the value of a good without the taxes that were added to it. VAT is a tax that applies at each stage of a supply chain, which is primarily used in the European Union, but let's not go into details about that. Well, this example has implemented 3 tasks. In the first task, the user introduces the inputs, which are country and product value. The first task is composed by a form, a very simple form, which, as I said, will require only a stock value and a country. And now the second task is where the business rules will apply. We're making use of a script task to call the business rule engine and do the calculations in our process. And finally, the third task will generate a PDF document with the inputs provided in the first task and the calculations made in the second task, which of course are done by the business rule engine. Now, you may ask, why do I need business rules for this scenario? Well, a standard approach will probably consist of elaborate code to create all these rules, which will also have to be maintained in the future. For example, what happens if the government changes the taxes or the formulas? Well, that will imply a cost in implementing your rules and then a cost of maintaining the process working. These scenarios can be better addressed with business rules, which besides of requiring almost no coding, will also grant visibility of the calculations applied in the project, making them simpler to understand and to change in the future. Let's take a look at how to install this plugin. To create a business rule, the workspace must have the plugin installed, of course. The installation can only be done by a ProcessMaker administrator. It is located under the Admin tab, Plugins, Enterprise Manager, and from here we should look at the PM Business Rule plugin. Just click on Install Now, and once it is installed, you will have an option here on the side, on the left side. Okay, so this is how the business rule engine looks like in ProcessMaker. Let's go into detail with this. Let's first create a new rule. To create a new rule, you have to provide a name and a brief description. There is this type option, which has single hit and multiple hit. This option will define if a rule set will evaluate all the rules or if it will stop once one of the rules applies. We'll get back into this in a minute. Now, the process field. It tells what is the scope of the business rules. The variable suggested and used in the rule will be read from the process selected. Well, let's create a sample business rule. All right. This table will be presented when the business rule is created. It is called decision table. Here's where the rules will be defined. Now, every business rule is composed by a set of individual rules. Each one should declare the conditions and the conclusions. A condition will compare a process variable with a criteria. So, for example, in my process, I have a variable named country. And then what I have to do is pick an operator. Let's use equal and a value to compare against. Let's say country equal Italy. Yeah, I don't know. Well, the return value here is not mandatory. It will be mostly used in triggers, but for the demo of these purposes, we're going to skip this column. Well, anyway, you can review that in the wiki as well. The wiki has very good examples that are making use of this return column. Just going to add some number here. Now, the conclusions are meant to modify a variable in the process. Let's say that I want to modify the stock value based on the country, Italy, to 100. This is how a rule is set in the business rule sets. We can make more rules, create more elaborate conditions, even use variables. I'm already making use of this. Well, that's how this works. Let's save it, and let's go back to our example. For this example, I have already prepared a set of rules. Let's open the rules, look at this here. So in this example, the task to be applied will compare the stock value and the country. The first rule says that if the value is less or equal than 100,000 and the country is Italy, then the taxes to be applied are 3%. Let me reopen this again. All right, so we can all see it now. So the values to apply are 3% per concept of country retention, country taxes, and this number 0.85% or 8.5% per concept of VAT tax. And the final stock value will be the calculation of the original stock value minus the country value and the VAT value, the tax. Well, and so on. As I was saying, the rules might vary on the country, based on the country and the stock value. As you notice here, this rule is set as multiple hit. It means that it will evaluate all rules and all conclusions will apply. In this example, if I order something for Italy, if I introduce a request for Italy and my value is less than 100,000, then the final stock will use these values. But if the stock value is also higher than 500,000, then my stock country value or my taxes will be set to 0 and my stock value will remain untouched. Otherwise, if I set this a single hit, only the first rule will apply and the last one will be ignored. Let's keep it at multiple hit. That's it. All right, let's take a look at the implementation before executing this example. Let's go back to the process to review how the rules were implemented. Let's remember that the first task will only collect the value and the country. The second task will invoke the rules. To do so, take a look at this. What I had to do was just introduce this function, tm_br evaluate, which stands for ProcessMaker business rules evaluate, and just introduce the name of my business rule, which in this case is stock VAT rules. And let's go with the demo. I think we're ready for that. Start creating a case. New case. If you're not familiar with ProcessMaker, then the way to create cases in ProcessMaker is going to Home tab and click a New Cases. And here is my case. I may process me. Now my case is case number 5, and I will declare some numbers here. My step value is 1,000, 1,000, and the country calculations we apply for is Germany. So I submit information, and the next task to be evaluated is the script task, which of course is named calculate values with value added task, which will, as you know, call the business rule engine. And so that's it. My business rules have been already fired. The rules were already triggered, and the results will be displayed in a document, in a PDF document. So for that, what we have done is create an output document in ProcessMaker, which is a way to generate documents. Let's save it. Let's open document. All right. So here's the PDF document. The first number is the value that I introduced in the form. The second number is the VAT, which goes accordingly to the business rules that we set here. This is for Germany, and the value is less than 100,000. So the VAT to be applied is 9.5%, which is correct. The same, the stock country fiscal rotation is 5%. Take a look at it. 5% as well, which is also correct. And finally, the final stock is the value of the initial stock minus the taxes added to this. Well, so that's a quick glance or a quick example of how the business rules applies in ProcessMaker. Now, the uses of business rules apply to many other areas. For example, shipping calculation, which might depend on the country, the product characteristics, and the client, or even the product price itself. Rules can be set to apply discounts based on the order side, the client relations, or some offers. Bank loan approvals. You'll find a complete example in the wiki, which also makes use of the return column and other cool options as well. Okay, I hope it was clear for you. This demo is complete. So, Giovanni?
Okay. Perfect, Edwin. That was great. So now, my dear attendees, we'll give you a couple of minutes for you to submit all of your questions and doubts, so you can use the questions interface from GoToWebinar, and we're going to be solving your doubts in a moment. Okay, perfect. So we have all of your questions. The first one comes from Daniel, who's asking, how is business rules different than and/or split? I think Daniel is asking about the difference between using business rules and a group of gateways.
Okay. So let's start with gateways. Gateways, they make changes in the flow. They are not meant to make change to the data itself. That's the main difference. Business rules can affect the data of a case. They will not direct the flow in any direction or will not route case to some specific task. Of course, gateways can make use of business rules to calculate values and then to decide what will be the next step on the flow.
Perfect. Another question here, what's the advantage in relationship to triggers? This can be done by triggers.
Okay. Triggers imply coding. Triggers implies some developer to do the work for you. And besides that, triggers does not grant visibility to a business user, to someone who's not familiar with coding or who's not familiar with the designer in ProcessMaker. While in this other case, with business rules, the decision tables are a concept that's well spread among business rules and the business rules idea in general.
Okay, we have another question from Daniel, who's asking, business rules are one of the most dynamic and ever-moving parts of a business. Is it possible to put in tests to make sure that specific return values returned given the specific test data?
In this scenario, what we'll have to do is create a test process so you can test your data, well, in a very controlled environment.
Okay, perfect. We have another question. I think this one is not related to this webinar's topic, but either way, how can we design insurance process from quotation to claims? Well, let me take that one. If you're looking for tutorials related to how to build your first process in ProcessMaker, you can always go to our website or to our documentation site, and you'll find really useful resources like these videos related to workflow solutions, where you're going to be able to find a couple of videos about the most common processes that we have in an organization, like the expense reports process, a leave of absence request process. And if you go to our documentation site at wiki.processmaker.com, you'll be able to find this section right here, Getting Started Guide, in order to design your first process and also to experience the user interface of ProcessMaker operator. I think the second question is also related to this topic. How are dynamic forms created? If we go back for a moment to the ProcessMaker website, again, you can find some useful tutorials here, which are going to guide you through the process of modeling a process, designing a responsive form in ProcessMaker, and so on. Okay, we have another question here that reads, I came in late. Will there be any accessible recorded session? Yes, we're going to share with you the recorded version of this webinar, and you will also be able to find it published on our website. Okay, I think we have a couple of questions here. When it comes to creating test cases, what does ProcessMaker provide as tools? I am wondering if there is a unit test type of module for processes. Thank you. That comes from Daniel. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we're not providing any test case tool yet in ProcessMaker. So this is out of ProcessMaker. We're not making any sort of documentation or any sort of technology that implements ProcessMaker and test cases along.
Okay. Now, in regards to tools that you can use when you're running a test case, something that you will find really useful for you is the ProcessMaker debugger. Since business rules are being executed by triggers, you can use it to monitor the values of the variables that you're using there. So maybe that will result being useful for you, Daniel. We have another comment from Zico, who's asking for the documentation for the enterprise plugins. For example, business rules, I cannot access. Something about the certificate. Okay, Zico, so we're going to take a look at the documentation and see that everything's working properly there. Okay, so I think that's all of the time that we have for today. You can always reach us sending us an email to training@processmaker.com or info@processmaker.com. I would like to thank you all for taking the time to attend today's webinar. Something that I would like to share with you, our upcoming webinars, we're going to be talking about how to integrate ProcessMaker with an Oracle database. On October the 2nd, we're going to be talking about how to connect ProcessMaker to your PostgreSQL database. On October the 23rd, and finally, how to integrate ProcessMaker with your Microsoft SQL Server database. And that will take place on November the 21st. So those are the technical webinars that we're going to present in the future. So if you're interested in any of them, you can always go to the ProcessMaker website and register yourself there. Okay, so thanks everybody again for attending today's webinar, and hopefully we're going to see you in one of these webinars right here.